we're doing this is so we can talk about it in the immediate real time that we've all just watched Discovery. So here's a place where we can talk about it as if we were all sitting at home on a couch and we just watched it together. And here's how all of this will work. Every Tuesday, after a new episode of Star Trek Discovery has aired, we'll be live and inviting you to join us.
And there are, in the Mission Log way, a few ways that you can do that. You can click the link in the comments to join the Zoom video call, or you can just pick up the phone and call 323-522-5641. That number again, 323-522-5641. Enter the conference number that you see on the screen now, and don't save that conference number because those links actually change from episode to episode. The number, of course, stays the same, 323-522-5641. But then the other stuff that you have to do changes. So check back each week for the right way to get it in, because we are certainly looking forward to talking to you.
By the way, quick shout out to Tim, Philip, Ben, and Thomas, who all wished us cheers. So thank you again, guys. It's that kind of a show.
Hey, you're hitting that pretty hard there, pal.
So what we do every week on Mission Log is we do a little description. We do a synopsis of the episode. We don't want to do that here because we are live. That takes time to do. But I'm going to give you the shortest of short recaps of what happened in episodes 1 and 2 of Star Trek Discovery. That would be the Vulcan Hello and Battle at the Binary Stars. So this is the 2 episodes where we meet the cast and then kill or maim half the cast. We meet Michael Burnham, a human raised on Vulcan, now the first officer on board the Shenzhou. Did I say that right? We have the captain, that would be Philippa Georgiou. We have the science officer, Lieutenant Saru. Then you got the Klingons, who have stayed out of Federation business for about 100 years. One of them, T'Kuvma, is bent on reuniting the 24 Klingon houses to take on the perceived threats of the Federation. An accident accelerates the coming battle with the Klingons, and Burnham argues to her captain that they should fire first. They don't. And when the Federation ships show up, well, it's a bloodbath. Many ships are lost, including the Europa and the Pirate Twins. We are left with a dead captain and a dead Klingon leader. That leaves his heir apparent, Vok, to take over, and Burnham court-martialed for mutiny. Mutiny? That's mutiny. I have it written correctly. Yeah, mutiny. Yeah, exactly.
So the kinds of things that we're looking to talk about on this show are the kinds of things that we talk about on a regular episode of Mission Log. I mean, yeah, there's going to be some talk, I would assume, about, design, some talk of, how things actually look. But the kinds of questions that we're sort of considering are things like, did Michael Burnham do the right thing? Did Captain Georgiou do the right thing? And what exactly is motivating the Klingons? I guess if somebody wants to argue that the Klingons also did the right thing, it'll be interesting to talk to you. Those are the kinds of questions, though, that we're looking to hit. And of course, we want you to bring your own thoughts and your own questions as well. If there was something that you saw that you're like, man, that is really Star Trek, we want to hear about that.
Yeah, and once again, how can we hear about that from you? Well, click that little link in the comments to join our Zoom video call, or call 323-522-5641 and enter the conference number that's on the screen. Those links change again for each episode that we do, so check back each week for the right one. Before we go to your calls, we do want to bring out a special guest. Look, I don't know how to phrase this, but as soon as we announced Mission Log Live, there was this one guy who kept calling and texting and saying, ooh, pick me, I want to be on. And we're like, come on, can we just, really, seriously? But we are going to welcome into the show tonight, and here he is, our executive producer and our good friend, Rod Roddenberry.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm so glad you let me call into the show. I've waited 5 years to finally get on an episode.
Yeah, you paid for it, so yeah, welcome. So here's the thing: we're not going to have you on super long, but we do have some questions for you, because this is a unique time for you. It's a unique time for Star Trek. You're a big fancy pants producer now,
yeah,
right?
Right.
But I'm just thinking about your connection to Star Trek ever since you were a child, that this wasn't your business, it was the family business. You've always kind of had an arm's length from Star Trek.
Yeah.
And now you find yourself in a position of actually being involved in the production of a show. I want to ask you a little bit about, well, what your involvement is like, but how does that feel? I mean, how do you find yourself now waking up as a guy who's actually working on Star Trek as opposed to somebody who kind of had this separation from Star Trek?
You know, I don't want this to sound like me just being nice. It's 100% true. There are so many people involved with the show, so many producers, so many executive producers, writers above the line and crew below the line, of course, the cast. It's an incredible collaborative effort, and there are people who are sort of off in the outskirts that share thoughts, ideas, notes, comments on scripts, revisions, and outlines that come in, and that would be sort of my end of things and Trevor's end of things. And then there are the people who are in the office every day, busting their ass to write these episodes, and they're the real heroes. They're the ones who have really worked night and day. I mean, they've been killing themselves, and I have to give them credit. And of course, not to leave out everyone who's up in Toronto working on the set. I mean, the crew's been spectacular, and the cast. I mean, I have limited exposure to the cast, but from what I've seen, everyone there seems to get along so far. Everyone seems to be like good people. The idea of ego has not seemed to hit anyone. I think we've seen Shaniqua Martin Green on a number of the shows, and she is the sweetest, most humble, loving person. And the cast is spectacular. Doug Jones. I mean, who doesn't love Doug Jones? For those of you who don't know him, he's played so many different characters. Unfortunately, most of the time his face is covered, like it is on this show. But he has got one of the biggest hearts. So it seems to be the right group of people to do this job, and it's the right group of people to do a Star Trek series, in my opinion.
I mean, you know better than, gosh, any of us. I mean, there's a certain mantle, there's a certain banner that's involved with Star Trek. And what's been really interesting is watching a lot of the actors, especially because the actors are the ones we see. Watching a lot of the actors really carry that banner. I mean, they're not saying, yes, I'm the star of this or I'm the captain of this. I mean, maybe they are doing that somewhat, but a lot of the time they've been spending talking about how important Star Trek has been and how they see it as an important thing to be a part of.
Yeah, no, it's been great to actually hear people talk about it publicly that are on the cast and of course crew side. When people are talking about Star Trek, they're paying homage and tribute to the legacies, to the idea. This is not just science fiction. That's been done. That's out there. We can see science fiction other places. Star Trek has a special spot out there. It means something to people, and it carries a message. I'm preaching to the choir, but I mean, it talks about that beautiful future where we no longer fear difference and change. We no longer, I don't want to say we even tolerate diversity. We embrace it. We love the differences between us. And our casting, my God, the casting for the show is spectacular. And I was just talking to a group of people. I remember reading some earlier scripts, and the parts were of men, and then casting would come along and be like, you know what, this should be a woman. And there was a lot of that. There was a lot of sort of like, let's get the right person for the job. And I can't thank the casting department and the casting team enough for doing that. They've nailed it, and they've kept the legacy of Star Trek from series to series going because they've really stepped up and brought the right people in. Man, woman, whatever it is, they brought the right person in.
Now,
go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of the response that I'm hearing from people, and maybe it's because I know a lot of Star Trek fans, but a lot of the response that I'm hearing from people has been pretty phenomenal. What kinds of things are you hearing? What kinds of things are you picking up? Like, what have you heard over the past few days since the public at large has gotten to see it that's really resonated with you? It's
interesting. I'm not going online. I'm not looking, not because I'm afraid of any negative. I mean, there's going to be negative no matter what. This series, and as I think most of you know, I don't think I'm letting any spoilers out. There's the first 2 episodes, which I think everyone's seen who's watching this, I hope. And then we start an entire new series almost, or at least a whole new backdrop for our characters. And this series changes throughout every episode, and it's very dynamic. I almost want to just not pay attention to anyone until the end of 15, because I feel like that you can finally sit back and go like, huh. I feel like you guys should do one final episode after the 15th episode that brings it all together, and everyone looks at the entire series and says, remember way back 15 episodes ago, we started here, we ended here. What is that story? What does that mean? What are the morals, messages, meanings, all of that stuff? So I haven't heard much. Sorry to make a short question longer, or a little short answer longer. But listen, there's going to be lovers and haters. And that's kind of what I want you guys to do. I mean, it's not, you guys are the ones who kind of thought of the show idea, which I think is spectacular, and I'm so glad you're doing it. I'm hoping that as you said, you can continue the dialogue that you and John have, and can actually, when people bring in questions, I'm hoping they'll be, for the most part, well thought out questions. I prefer people not to come in and be like, I hate it. I hope people will say like, listen, I didn't like episode whatever because of these 5 things, and then be able to have that conversation like the two of you often do. I think this is the platform for Mission Log, and we invite, I'm saying your lines, but we invite all points of view, all perspectives, and you guys have always handled that well. I'm going to stop talking in just a bit, but you guys have always been able to sort of look at the positive, the negative, find balance in between, and be objective, and all I can do at this point is hand it back over to you guys, because I can't thank you enough for doing an amazing job with Mission Log.
That's very kind of you. And by the way, before we let you go, some questions that are coming in from people who are watching right now live on Facebook. Our buddy Tim Robertson, he wanted to know if you're actually involved in casting at all.
I'm not. I would love to take credit for that. I really had very little to do. We get the casting forms come in by email. We get the name. We get a picture of someone. Early on, we got videos. We got to look at videos, and then of course, yes, we did say, I like this person, I don't like this person. Although I don't think we said we didn't like this one. But Shaniqua Martin Green, when she came in, we loved her, but she wasn't available. And so we were kind of bummed, but there were a lot of great people at that point. And so we looked down the road, there were some other people that were looked at, and all of a sudden she became available. And everyone felt the same way. We can't take credit saying we found her. The entire team found her. She just stood out. And so we are so lucky. I'm so lucky that she got killed on Walking Dead. She got killed, right?
Hey, what other question here, and then we'll let you go. Holly asks, maybe I missed it in the coverage, but why not Majel's voice for the computer?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer. I think it's more of a technical issue right now. The only thing we could do is sort of get a sound-alike, a voice actor to come in and do it, and I just don't think they've done that yet. That's not to say that I don't know, and I'm not hinting anything. It's not to say that it won't be seen or heard in the future, but there is nothing to my knowledge so far, and a lot of things happen without my knowledge. There's nothing in my knowledge so far where we have a computer voice that sounds like her. But again, a lot of things happen without my knowledge.
You just mean that in general, in
life.
In life. Yeah. Okay, I get that.
Without my knowledge.
Well, look, I don't know if you have to go right now or not, but I'm going to pretend like you have to go.
Yes.
So we can move on with the show and have some other people join us. But thank you so much. Thank you so much, not only for doing what you do with Star Trek Discovery, but for being a champion for Mission Log and coming on and doing something fun like this. It means the world to me and Ken.
No, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think it does. I don't know. I'm speaking for you, Ken.
Well, no, I actually wanted to say really quickly, every time we're on stage, any place like in Vegas or like when you're starting this show, you kind of embarrass me. And I gotta say, I mean, I wouldn't be here doing this if it wasn't for you. And this conversation that you've started between me and John has generated tons of conversation with tons of other people. And because you get some of the emails as well from people saying, I always thought I knew this about this show. And now, because I've been listening to you guys, I'm thinking about it in this way. And that's not bragging on me. That is, thank you very much for putting us together. Because I didn't know John from Adam. And so, thanks for making this happen. And now we're going to go make other stuff happen.
Absolutely. And everyone, I can't wait to hear all the different points of view and perspectives, exactly what Ken just said. You guys are going to find elements of the show and the story that none of us have thought of, and you're going to point out things. And I'm really looking forward to that, because that not only excites me, but it triggers things in the mind, and maybe we can make future things even better. So thank you very much, everyone. I love you all. Live long and prosper.
Thank you very much, Rod.
Isn't there a beaming effect now or something? All right, here, I'll do ring, delete, leave meeting.
All right, take care, man. So,
Ken,
right, question for you.
We hate Discovery now. No, I'm
right.
kidding.
So, question for you, Ken. You and I have just a handful of notes about the show, but I think we want to get out really quickly, kind of set the stage for the discussion we're going to have with our listeners. For the listeners who are hanging on, they're posting questions in Facebook and our chat, and then some of you have already called in. Very excited to get to you. But I've just got a handful of notes, just some initial thoughts that I want to get out, and then I think you're going to follow that with some of yours. You want to do that real quick?
Actually, why don't you do yours, and then we'll take a call, and then I can do mine if you want to, or we can just keep the calls rolling.
Great. Okay,
I can do that thing that I do where I respond to your notes and pretend like I actually wrote some of my own.
Oh, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. It's right. Just like the regular show. Now everybody has seen how the sausage is made. So just to get one thing out of the way right up front, the thing that is totally subjective about the show is design. I like it for the most part. I want to see new and different with enough reference to what I already know to start making mental connections. And I got that. I got some of that. I didn't get it everywhere, but I got some of that. So I'm cool with it, and I want to see where it goes. My other impression is that this is a Star Trek at War story. So it's going to be different right out of the gate. Now, I've always said that to me, Star Trek is a stretchy enough format to handle all kinds of different storytelling. So I'm okay with seeing where this goes for now. Maybe if the entire series is that, I might grow tired of it. But I'm interested to see where we go with this for now. One thing that I love is that what we have seen so far, the 2 pilot episodes, that they are a prologue. And I was thinking, okay, imagine that before TOS started, what we saw was Kirk's background with Kodos, or Spock's background on Vulcan leading up to joining Starfleet. Everything that we get here informs character and is really just the setup for what Discovery is now going to be. And it was a pretty bold, pretty weird move. And I have a feeling there will be a lot of payoff from the details that we got. And speaking of those characters, there was one thing that I liked even more the second and third times that I watched it, and that was the Spock, McCoy, Kirk vibe that I got from Burnham, Saru, and Giorgio. Sort of there's a little bit of bickering between Spock and McCoy, and then Kirk is usually the smartest guy in the room who is amused by what they're doing, but can also kind of put them in their place. And I got a bit of that. Like Captain Georgia, she has this great moment where she just smiles when she's sitting down in the captain's chair, because she's sort of like shut down what Burnham and Saru were arguing about. So I like some moments like that.
It is a strange thing, because you start off with, if you go back to the Man Trap, you start off with a team there, right? Or if you even go back to the Cage, Boyce and Pike have a relationship that we weren't privy to, but we just sort of jump in the middle of it. And honestly, that's sort of the way it felt here. And if we didn't have, the unfortunate loss of the ship that they were on and the unfortunate loss of the captain that we came to love in an episode and a half, right. This is a team that I buy. I don't necessarily see Kirk, Spock, and McCoy individually, but I see that sort of triumvirate. And I would be interested to see how that was going to go and how that was going to grow. And whoops, I guess not. There's one other thing really quickly, and this was actually a note that I did have down. Visually, it's beautiful, and it's not TOS from 10 years ago, or it's not 10 years before TOS. You're not going from this bridge to the bridge of the Enterprise. You're just not. But it's beautiful. We live in a different sort of production era now. We live in a different sort of production time now. Dan Davidson in our chat room, actually, one of the Trek geeks, actually asked a question that I was going to bring up. So this both answers his thing and addresses the design feel. The sounds. that's how they're tying us into TOS. The sounds, the communicator sounds almost the same. The door sounds the same. There are a number of sound effects that are from TOS. And so I sort of love that. Yeah, okay, it doesn't look the same, but look, you're still here. You're still in that timeline. You're still in that place. And it's just a little thing. But then being an audio guy, I mean, audio cues like that are just, I mean, they totally sell it for me. Do we have a caller that we want to get to, John?
Well, let's ask our technical director if we do. Yes. So let's bring on our first caller. And who do we have? All right, we have Josh. Excellent. So, Josh, welcome to the show. Oh, okay. Click yes, Josh, and then we'll have you. All right, while we're waiting for Josh, I will say that one thing that I'm really looking forward to as we discuss Discovery is that from this prologue, hey, it's Josh. All right, I'll come back to my thought in a moment. It's Josh, Joshua Zeller. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So what are your comments, thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I guess going into the first episode, I guess the biggest sort of question with all the build up and the hype is like, well, is this Star Trek? And I think,
yeah,
I think it
100% Star Trek. It's so the moral messages, meaning it's all there, and I just really loved seeing the diversity really brought to the forefront in terms of the theme, looking at the Klingons, learning how much more there is to them has really been sort of hinted at through all the various series, and to hear so much their language, the poetry, it was really, I was very, very impressed with all of it.
Joshua,
hey, Josh,
we're having a bit of trouble understanding you. I think the connection is kind of crapping out, but Ken, I think you and I both picked up on kind of similar themes there. So Ken, go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. First of all, thank you very much for taking part, Josh. And sorry the technical quality wasn't quite there. Yeah, I mean, I believe what Josh was saying was he feels like Star Trek is there, that there is Star Trek in this. There are a lot of people who have, we talked about this on a show recently, John. There are a lot of people who have wondered whether the animated series is actually Star Trek. And it's not just because it was produced by CBS that makes it Star Trek, I don't think. Although you can argue, I mean, they own the rights, they put it out there, they got the same actors, they were using the same drawings of the same costumes. So yes, that's Star Trek. That to me isn't what makes it Star Trek. What makes the animated series Star Trek is the fact that it is those stories. It is telling those same stories. It's putting up those same morals, if you will. There is some of that here. There is some of that here. It's very different. And I don't want to say, no, this isn't real Star Trek. The thing is, I don't know that I can quite say yet that it is. I mean, I think it's going to be. It feels like it's going to be. But we're in 2 episodes of a 15-episode run of we don't know how many years. There were questions that were raised that I think are very much Star Trek. I mean, certainly production wouldn't have allowed them to ask the same questions in TOS. But I mean, they're TOS type questions, I think, which you and I might get to in a bit. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I mean, yes, I mean, it certainly stands to be Star Trek. It certainly, the heart's there. The writers have the heart for that. The actors certainly have the heart for that. The producers, witness the fact that we just talked to one, have a heart for that. So yeah, I mean, I'm encouraged. I'm hopeful, dare I say. What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. I feel like what we got out of these first 2 episodes was setting the stage. So they have posed some interesting ethical questions. And the ones that I immediately wrote down for myself, did Michael Burnham do the right thing? Did Captain Giorgio do the right thing? And what exactly is motivating the Klingons? So you kind of jokingly asked up front, is there a way to defend or understand what, is there a way to understand their motivation here and understand the individuals who are making up this Klingon faction? So these are all good questions that are being laid out. And then really what we have to wait and see over the next 13 episodes is whether or not that plays out in a way that we would consider quote unquote Star Trek. The idea is, are we going to get to that place where, I think this is what you're asking, it's that optimistic view of the future, and to me it's part of that being better than who you say you are, or living up to who you say you are. This is the kind of theme that we identify in episodes like the Corbomite Maneuver, which to us is sort of that gold standard of Star Trek, where it's the crew that has been challenged, beaten down, and then saying, now we have to go help our enemy. So how much of that will we get in an ongoing story about war? It's a good question, and we've only just gotten a taste, like I said, that has laid the groundwork. And we don't know yet. We absolutely don't know yet. So what I'm seeing that is very Star Trek is you have this cohesive crew, you have these strong characters, you have this idea of them being in space and trying to do some level of exploration and getting hit with a challenge right away. But now that's going to propel us into a different type of story than we've been used to seeing. Do we have another caller we can take?
We should also remind people that this...
All right, so we've got Tony coming up, Tony Robinson, who I believe would be calling us all the way from the UK, if this is the Tony that I'm thinking of. Tony, are you there, my friend? There's Tony. Hi, Tony.
Hello
how's
there.
it going?
It's great at 3:30 in the morning. But worth it. Unfortunately, I don't have some scotch.
Oh, well,
What was
we'll
I
take a sip
thinking?
for you. Cheers.
That's the nearest thing I got. But anyway.
Okay.
So, I just had a comment. I was really taken by the opening sequence. First of all, I think it is definitely, for me, Star Trek. It encompasses a huge range of thoughts and ideas. But the opening sequence was very reminiscent of how I imagined indigenous American Indians fearing the oncoming of the white man. I'm doing inverted kind of commas there. And they were fearing this federation coming towards them. I know they had dealings perhaps in the past, but now there's this stirring within them. And now they're fearing, for some reason, that the spread of this federation culture will totally obliterate their culture, and they're forming together for whatever reason. But that's what I took from it. And the Federation's out there, almost lazy in a way, because they hadn't seen Klingons for 100 years. They hadn't dealt with them. They were totally unprepared, despite the advice coming from Burnham. They were totally unprepared for it. And then suddenly it all kicks off. But yeah, I like the premise. I like that starting premise. That was my 2 cents worth.
That's really interesting. I actually wonder if we're going to learn more about what the Klingons' motivation is. I mean, during TOS, the Klingons were just bad guys. They had no honor. I mean, they literally never spoke of honor, talked about honor. It really wasn't until Next Gen that we started to have them talking a lot about honor, maybe in some of the movies. But really, it was sort of in which one? Would it be Star Trek 3, John, where you really start to sort of solidify what the Klingons are, at least as far as, backing away from what was in TOS. We saw them in the motion picture, but we really only saw them in the motion picture. We got to know them a bit more going forward. I'll be curious, honestly, to see if we get motivation. Like, why did Takuma want to light the beacon? Why did he want to light the beacon when he did? I don't know if we're going to get an answer, because it's not only our captain we lost; it was their Messiah as well, or their new Messiah, or whatever. So, I mean, do we end up a few episodes in with the Klingons going, "Yeah, we didn't really have a plan for this because the guy who planned it, isn't here anymore." I mean, are we going to end up with the Klingons who are kind of, wondering why they're doing what they're doing? Or are they always going to be mustache twirling villains, except, of course, no mustache because they got no hair?
Yeah, I agree completely that, you know, the question here is going to be how much more of the Klingon mythos we build and how much motivation we can ascribe to them. The thing that I was fascinated with, and the thing that I hope is developed more, is this idea of Klingon faith. You know, we've talked about how Worf is sort of this fundamentalist Klingon because he was not raised Klingon. He's sort of having to construct his identity from afar. And then his run-ins with Klingons who are raised as Klingons are not always harmonious, shall we say. But now we've met a bunch of Klingons who are sort of the true believers, T'Kuvma and Vok. I think Vok is a really fascinating idea because he's somebody who I feel like is almost easily manipulated as he is able to manipulate others to express what it is that he wants. So I'm really curious to see where we go with him, and how much of what they express about these Klingon ideals is really just to solidify power, and how much of it is because they are totally 100% dedicated to this belief system built up around Kahless and their own sense of identity. So I'm expecting more out of them. And so far, I feel like what I've gotten out of the Klingons here has sort of informed a little bit of what I know about Klingons from the other series. But all that said, these are different Klingons, different house, different feel, different look, different motivations. So who knows what the future will hold there. Tony, thank you very, very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Get some sleep.
Thank you. I wish you had said get some scotch, but I'll get some.
All right, do both.
Great to meet you.
How you get to sleep is up to you, Tony. Really, that's fine. Get some sleep, get some scotch.
Whatever. You knew what went on in the background. Anyway, have a great evening, guys. Great show.
Right.
Thank you very much, sir.
Cheers. Take care. All right. So really quickly here, we want to tell you once again how to get in touch with us. You can click on that link to take you to the Zoom conference. You can also call us at 323-522-5641 and enter the conference number code, and we will be with you very soon. But first, a word from Eaglemoss. Really happy. You know, we were on for a long time before Eaglemoss came on to Mission Log, and then we called them and said, hey, we're doing this new thing, and they came on. So we're really happy to have them be a sponsor of today's show. Of course, you know them as the makers of the teeny tiny starships, though today we're talking about something a bit bigger. It is the official XL Starships collection. We are... These are ships from Star Trek, the original series, all the way through 2016's Star Trek Beyond. It's the same level of quality and attention to detail that you have come to expect from Eaglemoss, but of course, bigger. And I've got one right here, and I don't want to drop it. So I'm going to wait till John's talking, and then I'll show it to you. Each ship is die-cast and hand-painted, and comes with an in-depth magazine. I love these things, featuring the info and artwork, highlighting the ship's history, design and technology on board, along with the crew and weapons. And of course, it's that blend of real world and in-universe information that I love so much that you get in the magazine. Are you telling me, John, that you've actually been showing it? Because I was reading copy. I didn't see. No, I'm holding one right now, right here in my hand. Okay. I'm holding the Enterprise E, and it's super cool, and it's heavy, and it has a beautiful paint job on it, which people probably can't see because it's a little bit blown out, but it's tremendous.
Here's the thing, though. Look how happy he is. Look how happy he is right now. Don't you want to be that happy? Yeah.
I'm very happy. Oh, and by the way, John, a little detail I'll point out that makes me very happy is there are no holes in the ship to hold it on a stand. The stand just sort of slips around the hull there, and then you put it away like that, and no holes in your ships, Ken.
So here's the thing. If you tell people about the ship that we're offering a deal on, I can actually hold up that ship because I will
be glad to do that. You can start your subscription to the XL editions with the impressive 8.5-inch XL edition USS Enterprise NCC 1701D for $59.95 with free shipping That's 20% off the retail price of $75. You'll also receive 3 exclusive free gifts worth $100 as part of your subscription. The place to get that started is st-starshipsxl.com/subscribe. Again, st-starshipsxl.com/subscribe.
I just crashed my Starship into my microphone. I apologize.
How dare you?
I know. So just like all the other subscriptions that Eaglemoss offers, you can cancel at any time. So this subscription is completely risk-free. Now, if subscribing is not your thing, but there is one ship that you want bigger, that you want maybe an XL version of, you can choose from your favorites in the XL editions for the regular price of $75 each. There's a different URL for that. That is st-starshipsxl.com/shop. st-starshipsxl.com/shop. But of course, to subscribe, to build your fleet, and to get the $100 in extras, the address is st-starshipsxl.com/subscribe, and an XL-sized thanks to Eaglemoss for sponsoring Mission Log Live.
By the way, Ken, Chrissy in our Facebook chat here said that you should really have white gloves on. And I couldn't agree more.
That's
I think
the
I
problem
think
is then
Chrissy is right.
I'd have to paint my ship green. Oh no, I'd have green gloves, wouldn't I?
You would. You would have a green glove. Yeah.
It depends on if I'm doing the spokesmodel thing or the I've grabbed the front of the Starship and I'm just holding it in place thing. Like the great.
Well, let's get back to the calls. Thank you all for indulging us as we talk about our not so teeny tiny starships. We do have another caller on the line, and that would be Amy. Amy, welcome to the show.
Well, hi.
Hi, so nice to see you.
First time caller.
Glad to have you with us. So, what comment or question or thoughts do you have about Discovery?
Well, I heard a couple of comments on people that have saying that there's the Michael Burnham's character similar to Ensign Ro, with her being questionable status in Starfleet. So I wanted to know if you saw that connection and what you think of it.
Oh, no, that's pretty interesting. I heard another person who mentioned that actually it was Larry Nemechek who suggested that he thought that Michael Burnham was kind of cut from the same cloth as Tom Paris. You're bringing in somebody to the crew who's sort of has been in prison and needs to be rehabilitated, and we're not quite sure about having them on the crew. But I didn't think about that with Ro. And I'm a big fan of Ro because she was terribly underused in Next Gen.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that. I kind of wonder going forward how coarse that relationship will be between Burnham and the other crew members that she is then set up with. So I guess that remains to be seen. But yeah, good call. I like that. Ken?
Well, there's another really interesting thing that I didn't notice about Burnham, and you should have picked up on it right away. Orphan.
Oh, of course. She's an orphan.
Yeah, as is, almost everybody on the 1701D. I mean, you've been talking about that almost as long as we've been doing Next Gen. I mean, they've either lost a parent or both parents. They're all sort of fish out of water, which certainly she is. Although it's interesting, it's kind of like moving koi. I mean, she's being reintroduced to water in that she's back on a ship full of, with a human captain, but back off Vulcan. That's really an interesting idea, actually. I mean, sort of to what John said about Ro being underused, there's a wealth of stuff about Ro that we just never learn. I mean, she's not cardboard. But I mean, largely, if she's going to be on screen, she's going to be grumpy. One of the most interesting episodes with her, actually, I can't remember, was the one where, everybody lost their memory. And so all of a sudden, this whole new conundrum. Wow, well done.
Conundrum.
So, all of a sudden, there was this whole new sort of side of her personality that came out. But that's interesting. You could almost liken her to, golly, half the crew of the 1701D, actually, because, I mean, she is somebody who is an orphan, with the exception of Geordi, I guess. Almost everybody there could have some bit of Burnham, or there's some bit of Burnham in all of them.
All right, Amy, thank you so much.
All right, thank you,
Any parting thoughts? Any other thing that stood out to you?
No, I'm just
All right.
taking it in. I'm gonna watch it again and redigest and
Great.
get all of it before Sunday. So
Cool. Well, thank you for
Excellent.
joining us. Pleasure
thank
to
you,
see you.
guys.
Hey, before we go to our next call, I want to field a couple of questions here from the Facebook chat. Mike Seymour says, do you feel that Discovery will give us some more standalone, high-concept, problem-solving sci-fi episodes that Trek has in the past? I hope so. That's him saying, I hope so, not me saying I hope so. But sure, I hope so. I think that is reasonable to expect. You can't do bad guy of the week every week. You can't do battle of the week every week, I don't think. So if there are situations that get introduced that show some unity among the crew to solve a problem, sure. I don't see why that wouldn't happen. Again, remains to be seen. We got 13 more episodes to go, and then hopefully a season 2 and beyond. Ken, any thought about that?
Same as you. I hope so as well. And same as the person who posed the question. I'm sorry I missed your name. That's the kind of thing that I really want. I understand a 2-part starter because, especially the way CBS was doing it, it would be fine not talking about the business model, except to say broadcast one and then left it sort of hanging so that you would hopefully go over to another. And so that's really all we've seen so far. Now, from what we've heard, it's going to be long continuing stories, but I don't see any reason that you couldn't have. I mean, maybe your A plot is something that's happening that week that really is, raising an ethical question, while your B plot is the continuing story that's been going on over the last, 5, 6, 10, however many episodes that the continuing story is going to continue. I certainly hope so. Again, though, I mean, we've already come. I don't know whether the captain did the right thing in this episode. I don't know whether Michael Burnham did the right thing in this episode. I mean, we've already got stuff to chew on, which is exciting. I mean, rare is the show that says, hey, so here's your hero, but we're not 100% certain that they're actually heroic, right? I mean, Castle, the good guys on Castle always did the right thing. And that's really probably the last primetime quote drama end quote that I watched. Rare is the show that doesn't tell you what you should think about your main character. And while we're all on Michael Burnham's side, I don't know that we could all say that she was right the whole time. And right there, you're already halfway to Star Trek. I mean, if they then introduce questions that are really like, but what do you really think about this? Or, solving some societal or moral problem, excuse me. I mean, yeah, it's, we're already a good bit of the way there, I think.
I will say one thing related to that question about doing some standalone or problem-solving episodes. If anybody watched Enterprise, season 3 of Enterprise was a bold new experiment for, 2003 going into 2004, where they decided to tell a season-long story. The Xindi arc that got introduced in episode 1 and wrapped up by the end of that season. But along the way, they did standalone stories as well. So you would have episodes that could be taken on their own if you weren't paying attention to everything. But what they would do is just leave a little hint or leave a little bit of that story thread about the overall arc, so you weren't totally missing out. I think they found a pretty good balance in that. Now, whether you liked the series or liked those episodes or not, besides the point, I'm just saying that they're able to do it. So that might be the kind of thing that we expect in Discovery as well.
So this show is generally speaking going to be an hour long. It might be a tiny bit shorter than that. It's not going to go over, though. The good news is you still have a few more minutes to get your call in. So 323-522-5641 is the phone number, or you can click on that link on that thing that you're watching. That is exactly what Barry has done. Can we bring in Barry?
The famous Barry.
The famous cheap Canadian discount of Slow-Mo Jonathan.
Great to see you, Barry. And look, you were calling us from Barry DeFord World Headquarters, Starfleet World Headquarters. There.
As you can see, yes, I am in the decked out room for sure. I'm doing a bunch of marking and listening to your guys' wonderful conversations. So it's nice to be on the show.
Excellent, man. Well, welcome. And what are your thoughts this evening?
Well, I watched it with two non-Trek fans just last night because I'm a Canadian who doesn't have cable, which is fine. But I swore off social media for the night. But one thing that I found is either going to be amazing or it could be a bit of a hurdle for the show is the idea that when they're building these Klingons, they're sort of making them so that they're no longer a mile wide and an inch deep. I like to think of it, like in the older versions of the Klingons, you guys are sort of talking and you've spoken before about a monoculture. In this case, we are getting so much more in depth into their culture. And I really feel like, you could almost do a sociological study on them, perhaps by the end of this. And you may end up with a bit of maybe sympathy for the devil to a degree, to quote a song that I like.
Well, I kind of hope that that's exactly what they do. I mean, we've been teased with the idea that there are 24 Klingon houses, and we're just seeing a slice now of one, and they have a very specific belief system and specific sort of take on what is important to them. So I would hope that further down the road, we see more of how that integrates into the other Klingon houses and what motivates them. But yes, I agree. As Ken was saying a little bit earlier, this thing that we've seen before is sort of what was introduced later in the game around Star Trek III, these ideas of honor and culture for Klingons, but we got the surface view. And now we're going to take a step back, go earlier, dig a little deeper, and at least find out about this one house, and then how that impacts the others. I'm anxious to see.
There's also an interesting thing, though. There's a possibility that what we're going to see is the merging of the Klingons into a monoculture. And there are two things that make me think that. I mean, first of all, that's Takuvma's whole thing. Is we sort of lost our way and we need to come back as one. But the other thing is, and this is a bit of retconning maybe, and I'm okay with it, when Michael Burnham is fighting that Klingon on the outside of the ship, she sees what the computer recognizes as a Klingon symbol. We know it as the Klingon symbol. So I mean, it's possible that we're going to see a bit of a melding in a way. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I am doing what John calls playing the home game at this point. But I mean, it is weird to think that, I mean, we've always had this monoculture, and now we're being introduced to, there are all these different cultures. But the very beginning of this is we're all scattered all over the place. We need to come back together. We all need to go back to Kronos and become one again. So, I mean, we may actually be seeing them turn into, both a bigger power and maybe lose a bit of their individuality at the same time. It's tough to say because we're only on episode 2.
Only episode 2. We've so long to go still, don't we? But I'm appreciating I'm appreciating sort of what's been put forward. And like I was saying, I watched it with two non-initiated Trek fans, I guess we could say. That they will be, I think, with this series, I hope at least. But yeah, I feel like to a degree they might turn to me and be like, what? Who is a Kalis? What's a Kalis and what's a Batleth and all that sort of stuff. And I think as ambassadors for Trek, maybe we can be that as well, because we do have a lot of background that we can sort of supplant if anyone does have any questions. So that's another great thing about this new series and get new people on board.
Yeah, I mean, how did they feel about it after they? I mean, do you think that they're excited or are they confused?
a bit of both, actually. I would say that definitely, like, starting with the subtitles right away, there was a bit of a disconnect. I felt like, I don't know, I'm no Betazoid, but I definitely felt a bit of okay, I was expecting English, but I mean, as the episode picked up, definitely, once you got to like Michelle Yeoh and Sonequa Martin Green, the way they played off each other, I think that was really interesting. They have really good chemistry on screen, and Saru's character as well sort of added a nice little kind of McCoy-esque foil. I think someone mentioned that earlier. And so I think there's some recognizable bits, but I mean, there might be some moments that we as Trek folk might just think, oh yeah, well that's what they're talking about. But to the uninitiated, definitely there could be a little bit of whoa, you just lost me there.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. All right, Barry. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. We'll let you get back to your trekking
Yes.
there. Clearly, you have plenty of stuff to keep yourself occupied. All right.
A lot of toys. Thank you.
Yes, nice. All right, take care, man. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go to some questions here from the Facebook chat. Jocelyn, our friend Jocelyn, says, I find the TNG DS9 era Klingon so incredibly boring, so I'm very happy to get a new variety of Klingon in Discovery. Okay, sure. I mean, there was... I think maybe that goes back to what Barry was saying about being what was it, a mile wide and an inch deep rather than the other way around. Is that we got a lot of Klingons, but maybe not necessarily out of depth with Klingons.
Yeah.
So I feel you there. And I guess, the thing that we could ask ourselves about the Klingon motivation here is that, all right, if T'Kuvma feels like they need to be reunited in order to rediscover their culture, rediscover who they are as Klingons, is that necessarily a bad motivation? If we were to say that about the people of Earth, if we were to say that, well, it's not a bad thing necessarily for the different cultures of Earth living on different continents on Earth to assess and rediscover some sort of common humanity, common purpose, common goal, that's not necessarily a terrible thing. I think you can certainly argue that the Klingons try to find that through battle, through the shared experience of war, which is abhorrent and terrible. But maybe that's an angle here about what's driving the Klingons that we could actually try to understand.
Well, it almost goes back to the thing that we hit on when Amy asked about Ro earlier, right? I mean, so what do we know about T'Kuvma? The ship was derelict. Other Klingons were just sort of playing on it, and certainly that could be what's the word I'm looking for? That could be allegorical or metaphorical, like they were playing on his father's ship. Okay, well, basically that just means like they were walking around pretending to be Klingon, but not really being Klingon, right? And so he's been this outsider. So his desire to draw them all together might just be a desire to be a part of something bigger than himself, which is exactly what he said to and about Vok. I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, I'm kind of cool with them all like going all over the place if them coming back together means war automatically.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we have one other call that we're going to get to. Before we do that, though, I want to let you know about something else that we would love for you to do this evening. After our show, stay on Facebook and catch the live recording of Priority One, also a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. They used to record on Thursday nights. They now record on Tuesday nights because they also want to talk about Discovery. But they're doing a lot more than that. Each week, it's Elijah, Kenna, Tony, and Winters. I bring you news from all over the Star Trek multiverse, TV and movies, gaming news, literary reviews, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. They will kick off pretty soon after our show ends. So sometime after 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, every Tuesday night, live on Facebook. So when this show is over, please head over to their show. It's facebook.com/Priority One Podcast, because you could have a whole night of Star Trek discussion. And wouldn't that be less than enough for everybody?
Ken, I'm going to take another question here from the Facebook chat. Dave says, hi, David. Do you think they will reference Spock, Pike, Kirk, Archer, etc., or even see these types of people on camera? Well, I mean, they've kind of laid the groundwork for that by having Sarek. We've kind of laid the groundwork for that by having certain sound effects and making references. We mentioned Donatu 5 from The Trouble with Tribbles. So there are these little hallmarks that they are mentioning. I was really glad today I saw an article about David Allen Mack's book in which the crew of the Shenzhou encounter Pike and his Enterprise. And he did a fun little bit of retconning by saying that the uniforms that we see in the Pike era and TOS era stories were reserved specifically for those people on Constitution-class starships. hence Enterprise, hence seeing Matt Decker and the Doomsday Machine wearing that style of uniform. It's just that everybody we've seen has been wearing that type of uniform. Doesn't mean that the other stuff didn't exist. So if you want to read more, check out David Allen Mack's first Discovery novel. I forget the title of it. I don't have that in front of me. But that is one of the officially licensed Star Trek Discovery novels. So
Wow.
David, I think they are laying the groundwork for exactly that. To what extent, I don't know. I honestly hope that Discovery sticks with its own stories, sort of the integrity of what they're trying to do, and not just force a bunch of stuff in there. But it is fun when you pick that up.
I got to say, Discovery has already done something absolutely amazing. It got John Champion to talk about a Star Trek novel.
Never again. Never again.
That's almost enough right there. No,
yeah, we're done here.
We got more of them coming out, I think. Speaking of which, I think we are done here, right?
Yeah. Do we have a last caller?
Oh.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Then I believe we'll wrap it up in the traditional way by reading the credits.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log Live by Infinity Networks, producer Brandon Bradley. Do be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network, including not just Mission Log, but also Women at Warp and Priority One. And don't forget, they kick off in just a very few minutes, facebook.com/Priority One Podcast. And we would again like to thank Eaglemoss and the official Star Trek Starships collection for sponsoring this show. Don't forget to check out their deals. st-starshipsxl.com/shop. And if you missed any part of the show, it should actually play again here, when you hit again or something, and it'll be up as an audio podcast soon.
Hey, and once again, cheers, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm just seeing the good nights and the thanks, and that is incredibly gratifying. We really thank each and every one of you for joining us, and we will see you again Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, right here at Facebook Live.